Hi friends, Caitlin Becker here with the Weekend POSTcast post-mortem. Here's what you missed this week in true crime. Something fishy is going on in Philly. Back in 2011, a beautiful, beloved 27-year-old teacher was found dead in her apartment in the middle of a blizzard. Her fiancé was the one who discovered her body. Ellen Greenberg had a knife sticking out of her chest and suffered almost 24 stab wounds. She was stabbed in her heart, her chest, her neck. And when I say neck, I don't mean the front of her neck here. I'm talking about the area below the back of her skull. Her death was ruled a homicide, of course, right? I mean, that seems glaringly obvious. Well, the medical examiner suddenly changed that to suicide a couple of weeks later. Greenberg's family wasn't buying it. They firmly believe that she was murdered, and they've gone down every single legal avenue that they can think of to try to get the case reopened. The Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office finally completed a long-awaited review of the case and ruled again that Greenberg's wounds were self-inflicted, and her fiancé was never a suspect. The ME said, quote, "While the distribution of injuries is admittedly unusual, the fact remains that Ellen would be capable of inflicting these injuries herself." I can't even fathom that. And look, I am not an expert, but if I were on a jury and a defense team showed me a wound pattern just like this and said suicide, I wouldn't buy it either, just like her family. Now, her parents' lawyers had this to say to the Philadelphia Medical Examiner: "Shame on you." The bodega clerk who admitted to murdering 6-year-old Etan Patz back in the 70s might be getting out of prison. Now, you've probably heard the name Etan Patz before, or at the very least, you've seen his face. He was one of, if not the first kids to ever be on a milk carton, and his sad story is one of the very first huge true crime cases. Etan was just 6 years old when he vanished in the Soho area of Manhattan on his way to the school bus, the very first day his parents let him do this. This was back in 1979, and his body has never been found. Police were baffled for decades. Then in 2012, a bodega clerk named Pedro Hernandez confessed to murdering the boy. Now, he was tried for murder not once but twice. His first case ended in a hung jury. Then all of a sudden, in 2017, the courts overturned his conviction on a technicality because the judge didn't give thorough enough jury instructions. Well, while prosecutors decide whether or not they're going to try him for a third time, his lawyers say Hernandez should be released. Now, they made their arguments earlier in the week in front of a federal judge who hasn't yet ruled on whether the formerly convicted killer in one of the most famous true crime cases ever will be back on the streets. Killers who have gotten away with murder for decades, well, they hate to see new DNA testing coming. Yep, police in Nassau County, New York say another cold case was just solved thanks to modern technology. On Wednesday, a Walmart worker was arrested for the 1984 slaying of a 16-year-old girl. Mind you, 3 other men were previously arrested and convicted in this case. Teresa Fusco disappeared one November night back in the mid-'80s after leaving the local skating rink where she was working at the time. She'd apparently gotten fired that night and was visibly upset when she was walking out the door. Now, her naked body turned up a few weeks later in the woods near that rink, buried beneath some leaves in a shallow grave. Teresa had been sexually assaulted, beaten, and strangled to death, and crime scene techs at the time took DNA from her body. 2 years later, 3 local men were found guilty of her murder, but in a massive twist. Later, after spending nearly 20 years incarcerated, DNA evidence cleared them and all 3 were exonerated. The Fusco family was understandably crushed. Here they were again, with no closure and no answers. Now, years after that, police would identify a man by the name of Richard Bilodeau. He was 24 at the time of the crime and operating a coffee truck nearby. Remember how I just mentioned that CSI techs took DNA? Well, all investigators needed at that point was to try to make a DNA match. And much like we saw with the Brian Kohberger and Rex Heuermann cases, they found it in the garbage. This guy picked up a smoothie, drank it, tossed the cup in the trash, along with his DNA. The district attorney says Bilodeau's DNA is a 100% match to what was taken back in 1984 from the body of Teresa Fusco. Now, his defense attorney disagrees, and he's back in court at the end of next month. Now, after Bilodeau's arrest, Teresa's father said that he'd never given up hope. Quote, "I always had faith in the system." And those 3 men who were falsely convicted in this case originally, they took home a $43 million judgment from a lawsuit over their false convictions. Now, you don't hear about a female serial killer very often, but you're about to. Allow me to introduce you to Ana Paula Veloso Fernandez. She's 36, a mom, a law student, and she looks like an Instagram model. And cops in Brazil believe that she's killed at least 4 people over the course of just 5 months. Investigators say her MO is usually rat poison, but that Veloso Fernandez also allegedly stabbed her landlord during an argument. And it was his murder that prompted a deeper investigation into this beautiful blonde. And let's talk about the landlord murder, shall we? Police say Veloso Fernandez not only killed the guy, but let him rot in her home for days. She allegedly confessed to investigators that she'd hung like a towel or sheet in the doorway to the room so that her son and niece wouldn't see the putrid corpse with the maggots. Mom of the year, huh? Here's how investigators describe her. Quote, extremely manipulative, takes pleasure in killing, no remorse. Pretty much they said she kills just to kill. And to make matters worse, cops say she fine-tuned her poisoning method on poor dogs, killing at least 10 of them. Veloso Fernandez is currently in police custody while the bodies of her alleged victims are being exhumed for testing. I am obsessed with this woman. When do we get an allegedly active current serial killer now, these modern times? Like, my mind can't even wrap itself around this story. A beautiful, blonde, female, modern alleged serial killer. I mean, that is true crime catnip. And what a way to end this weekend's true crime update, the POSTcast Postmortem. Don't forget, like and follow the New York Postcast for more of all of this, and of course, for all of the other news you need during the week here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.